In a strong statement against the leadership of Syria, the U.S. has closed its embassy and Britain has pulled out its ambassador. President Obama is saying now is the time for Assad to go. The British Foreign Secretary has called the Syrian government a, quote, murdering regime. So joining us with more on this turmoil is Pamela Falk. She is CBS News foreign affairs analyst. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely, Betty.
All right, so explain this measure by the U.S. and Britain to pull out of the embassy and then pull its ambassador from the country.
It's really a statement of the failure of diplomacy, and that is because the Arab League recommended to the UN to take action, and that's what we saw this past Saturday, the inaction and the inability of the UN Security Council to actually approve of a pretty diluted resolution that didn't call for sanctions, didn't call for an arms embargo, but condemned the regime and told them to put down arms. And what you see is Russia and China aligning with Bashar al-Assad, and that's partly what's emboldening him and making diplomacy very difficult.
So as a result, are we going to see Assad step up violence against the rebels just as a result of all of this?
It certainly seems that way. There's a lot of arms coming in from Russia. China has supported the regime. And what you may see, because of the trip of the Russians to Damascus, the attempt to offer concessions to the opposition. But the opposition has already rejected those, and that is because over 5,000 people are dead. The violence has been absolutely brutal, and the opposition wants a transfer of power. And that, curiously, is not just what the Western powers have asked for, but the Arab League.
Are we going to see some kind of intervention like what we saw in Libya with the NATO airstrikes? Is that even a possibility? Is that on the table?
It's not really on the table. The White House has said nothing is off the table, but the U.S. is very loath to do that, and so is Western Europe, without the UN Security Council mandate. And that's what you had in Libya. Now, you do have a bit of the Libya syndrome here, because both China and Russia are saying Libya went too far with the UN mandate for NATO, and it ended up with regime change. But here is one case where you do want regime change, because Assad is not moving, and Assad is not finding a way through to reforms, and it's been pretty brutal what he's been doing. So what you're starting to see is more crackdown, and he's become stronger because of the Russian support, no question.
How do you stop it? How do you get Assad to either step down or stop committing this violence against protesters?
I think it's going to have to be done on a unilateral basis with all of the different countries. In other words, the European Union is imposing sanctions, the U.S. is imposing sanctions, and there will be arms embargo and restrictions on Syria's bank. And so all of that will have an effect. But Assad has basically someone who is bailing him out, and that's Russia and China on a political basis. But Russia has a naval base there. They're sending very heavy armaments, and they're supporting the country with investments. So what it looks like now, Betty, is a prolonged, bloody civil war.
So you're saying essentially it's coming down to sanctions at this point. That's really the harshest treatment that can be given.
Yes, and arms and the NATO airstrikes wouldn't work anyway, because the Assad crackdown is on the ground.
Okay, but what kind of sanctions will work? I mean, will they?
They will work because so much of Syria's investment is through its central bank. Those that kind of sanctions and arms embargo by different countries may very well help. But Russia's assistance is what's undermining all of this. And so what the United States and Western Europe probably have to do is try to appeal to the Russians and the Chinese to back down from their support for Assad, because it's ending up in a situation that is threatening the region, destabilizing all of the relations in the region with the Arab world, and empowering Assad to brutalize his people.
So it doesn't sound like this is going to end anytime soon.
No, unfortunately, it's not a good scenario, because they do have backing, and that's the biggest problem.
All right, Pamela Falk, thanks so much for your information. We always appreciate it.
Absolutely, Betty. Good to be here.